Hello, you're on the Ruslan Belov channel, and today we're going to discuss the situation in Ukraine as of July 16, 2025. A lot has happened today, so let's get started. But before we begin, I kindly ask you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It really helps with its growth. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. Overnight, most of the strikes were concentrated in the southern and southwestern parts of Ukraine. For example, a large number of strikes were recorded in the town of Ismail. Some photos and surveillance footage show explosions, apparently filmed from Romanian territory. NASA satellites also detected a significant thermal anomaly in the same area near Ismail. These industrial facilities, which reportedly stored NATO weapons now actively being shipped into Ukraine, appear to have been destroyed. Strikes were also recorded in Odessa, with footage showing smoke, possibly the aftermath of a destroyed warehouse. The highest number of explosions and strikes occurred in Kryvyi Rih. There's no official surveillance footage, only a few photos and nighttime video clips showing distant explosions. The mayor of Kryvyi Rih reported 300 explosions during the night, caused by strikes from 28 drones. This suggests there was secondary detonation. According to the mayor, this was the largest attack since the start of the special military operation. As a reminder, former US President Donald Trump stated last Friday or Saturday that he would make an important announcement on Monday regarding the Russian Federation and the overall situation in Ukraine. It appears that during this time, the Russian leadership decided to halt all strikes. The strike that occurred last night, from July 15th to 16th, came after a 3-day pause. There were no strikes on Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday. This was likely due to the fact that Trump's special representative Keith Kellogg is currently in Ukraine, holding meetings with various officials, including Budanov, the acting defense minister, and President Zelensky, to discuss arms deliveries. When Trump announced he would make a statement on Monday, the Russian leadership seemingly chose to de-escalate and allow the American envoy to visit Kyiv and complete his mission without complications. However, after Trump issued a series of ultimatums to Russia, stating that the conflict must end within 50 days, or the US would impose 100% sanctions not only on Russia, but also on partner countries such as China, India, and Brazil, the Kremlin quickly decided it made no sense to let Ukraine stockpile weapons during the envoy's visit. Russia resumed strikes. At the moment, Russian forces are conducting large-scale offensives along the front line, and every warehouse and every second counts. Although these strikes might strain US-Russia relations while Keith Kellogg is in Kyiv, it seems the situation on the ground is now a higher priority for Russia and Putin personally. The goal is to destroy as many warehouses and weapons shipments as possible to allow Russian troops to advance more rapidly. Now let's turn to the ground situation. Today there are many noteworthy updates and corrections. We'll start with the Dnipro direction, where Russian forces resumed their advance after a short pause. Yesterday, they fully cleared the village of Voskresenka. This was confirmed by the Russian Ministry of Defense, along with a published video showing evidence. Today, Russian units are pushing further, mainly to the north and northwest, toward Hrushkivska, Novokadska, Zelenyi High, and Andreevo-Klevtsova. Footage has emerged from Novokadska showing Russian troops engaged in combat there. The video includes scenes of artillery preparation and house-to-house clearing. In the final moments, Russian soldiers raise flags. These flags were all geolocated. The footage is authentic and clearly shows where the flags were placed. 4 to 5 flags were recorded in the video. Based on this, it's now confirmed that Novokadska is fully under Russian control. The status of Hrushkivska remains unclear. Some pro-Russian cartographers have already marked it as captured, although there is no confirmation from the Ministry of Defense or verified geolocation data. Meanwhile, Russian troops are advancing toward the final settlements in this sector of the Donetsk region: Andreevka-Klevtsova to the northwest and Zelenyi High to the north. Clearing forest lines and closing in on these towns may take a few more days, but offensive operations could begin as early as next week. It appears the Vostok Group will soon fully secure the western part of the Donetsk region. Next, we move to the Pokrovsk sector, which is producing a lot of important news. In recent days, we focused on the northeastern and eastern flanks of the Pokrovsk agglomeration, where the front line has collapsed. This isn't just reported by pro-Russian analysts, neutral and pro-Western sources also acknowledge this. Advancing here is not easy for Russian forces. Ukraine continues to send reinforcements to stabilize the front. Russian drones are active. Still, the Russian army is advancing, and the Ukrainian side is suffering heavy losses. Equipment is being destroyed in Novoekonomikne and Fedorivka. Currently, fighting is centered around Fedorivka, Boykivka and Novotoretske. These villages are partly in a grey zone and partly under Ukrainian control. But the most notable footage today comes from the area of Mykolivka. A few days ago, the Russian Ministry of Defense announced full control over Mykolivka. At the time, there was no visual confirmation, prompting skepticism. Now, 3 or 4 days later, the MOD and affiliated Telegram channels have published footage showing the clearing operation. It begins with artillery preparation, followed by Russian troops moving through the town, clearing buildings. Troops are seen in central and northern areas. Based on this, it is now confirmed that Mykolivka has been taken. Some cartographers are marking the entire eastern pocket, east of Novoekonomichne, including the village of Myrna, as under Russian control. It appears Ukrainian defenses there are breaking, and troops are retreating westward toward the Komsomolska mine. Russian forces are also expanding their presence north of the sector to tighten the encirclement from the south, east, and north. There are increasing reports and visual confirmations of Russian troops nearing the eastern outskirts of the Krasnolimanska mine. Perimeter positions are reportedly secured. A possible assault on the mine may begin tonight, from July 16th to 17th. There is also information about Russian forces entering the area of Krasny Lyman, where fighting is ongoing. Summing up the past 24 hours, the battle for Rodinske has definitely begun. While fighting is currently on the outskirts, combat for the town itself is underway. Moreover, today's developments are especially interesting, and it's worth paying attention not only to the eastern and northeastern flanks of the Pokrovsk agglomeration. Today, intriguing footage and updates are coming from the area of Udaknoye, which is not on the northeastern or eastern flank, but rather on the southwestern one. Today, pro-Ukrainian cartographers from the Deep State team have made corresponding map updates, indicating that Russian units have managed to secure positions on the western outskirts. In other words, the village of Udaknoye has effectively been encircled by Russian forces from both the east and the west, and it appears that in the near future, the intensity of combat operations there will increase. The main objective of the Russian army is, of course, to push Ukrainian formations further north, toward the area of Sergeyevka, because after Udaknoye, the Russian military is expected to advance toward the Pokrovskaya mine, an important industrial site. This site will not only allow for force build-up for future offensives, but more importantly, it will give Russian forces the ability to safely deploy FPV drones to strike the M30 highway. This road is essentially the last, and likely the only route still under Ukrainian control that is used to supply and support the garrison within the Pokrovsk agglomeration. So if the Pokrovskaya mine falls and Russian troops establish control over it, Pokrovsk itself could end up in operational encirclement, since using the M30 would no longer be safe. Anything moving along that route will undoubtedly be targeted and destroyed by Russian drone operators. Again, if we summarize and add the ongoing developments on the northeastern, northern, and eastern parts of the Pokrovsk agglomeration, it's clear that encirclement or a full cauldron scenario is rapidly approaching. However, it all depends on two key points: Rodinskoye in the north and, of course, the Pokrovskaya mine. If Ukrainian forces lose control over these two strategic sites, then we can already talk about the final stage of the battle for Pokrovsk, despite no visible advances yet within the city itself. Next, we move to the Constantinovka sector, where the situation remains unchanged. We are still awaiting the collapse of the Shcherbinovsky pocket, but so far no new information has been published. It appears the Ukrainian side is currently either launching counterattacks, trying to stabilize the situation, or attempting to withdraw their forces. Over the past 24 hours, a significant number of strikes have been recorded against Ukrainian positions in the areas of Kleban-Baik, Yablunivka, Oleksandrivka, and Kalinove. Russian aviation is active, artillery is striking, and drones are operating, but as you can see, without any changes to the front line. A similar situation is observed in the Serebryanka sector. There is high activity from Russian artillery and FPV drones. However, today, some pro-Russian analysts have made small adjustments in favor of the Seversk direction. According to certain units and sources, Russian forces managed to make slight advances and have narrowed the distance to the town itself. Perhaps soon we will see objective control footage to confirm this, and based on that, map updates will be made. Moving on, we head to the North Kupiansk direction, or more specifically, the northeastern part of Kharkiv region. This is where very interesting news is coming from. Let's begin with the area along the border, near the settlement of Milov. Today, pro-Ukrainian cartographers released updates suggesting that Russian troops expanded their zone of control and came close to the settlements of Ambarnaya and Katna. It's possible that Russian forces will begin storming both locations soon. If Ukraine loses control over them, the Russian army will significantly improve its positions and could launch a broader offensive toward Veliki Burluk, possibly in the direction of Prikolotne or toward the Oskil River, to link up with Russian units currently operating along the Dvorichna-Kamenka line. However, when we speak of the northeastern part of Kharkiv region, the most important developments today are coming from the city of Vovchansk. A major new update was made to the map today, and this isn't just the beginning of movement in this area since 2024. Recall that in May 2024, the Russian army launched the Vovchansk offensive, which could not be completed that year. In fact, most of northern Vovchansk wasn't even taken in 2024. But in 2025, we're seeing that the situation has clearly changed. Not only is northern Vovchansk apparently nearly fully cleared, but Russian units are now advancing into western Vovchansk, south of the Vovcha River. Moreover, today it appears that Russian forces fully took control of the oil factory located on the western side, a key industrial zone and a critical strategic objective. At least, that's what is confirmed by objective control footage published by Ukrainian sources from the 57th Brigade, which is responsible for this direction. The footage is quite lengthy, and we won't show all of it because the strikes target soldiers and there's a lot of violence. But what matters most is that 3 key locations were hit, one inside the factory itself, another just north of it on the outskirts, and one strike was recorded in the nearby forest. What's more, judging by the control footage, the strikes were not targeting advancing Russian soldiers or convoys. They were hitting established positions. So if we analyze this video, every strike hit a trench, a dugout, or a temporary fortification. This suggests that Russian forces didn't just seize these areas today, but have likely been present in western Vovchansk for some time. Some pro-Russian analysts have even provided broader updates to the map, suggesting that Russian forces have cleared not only all of western Vovchansk, but also a large forested area between the Siversky Donetsk River and western Vovchansk. That's the area we're referring to. In recent days, there have been several reports from the North military grouping stating that units of Ukraine's 57th Brigade launched a series of counterattacks. However, all of these Ukrainian counterattacks failed. It seems clear now that Ukrainian forces attempted to retake western Vovchansk but were unsuccessful. The Russian army confidently holds the western part, including the area south of the Vovcha River, and so the battle for Vovchansk is likely to conclude very soon, possibly even this summer. Now, regarding the Sumy sector, intense fighting continues around Kondratovka. Today, an additional update was made in favor of the Ukrainian armed forces based on newly available footage. It shows strikes being carried out against forward Ukrainian positions in the western part of Kondratovka. Let's take a look at how the map has changed for better clarity. Just yesterday, these areas where strikes are now occurring were considered grey zones or even under Russian control. Today, there is no doubt that Ukrainian units are gradually advancing in the west and north. However, despite the Ukrainian progress, the Russian army maintains its presence in the south and east of Kondratovka, and combat operations are ongoing. And that's all for now, dear friends. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and all the best to you.